Hi friends, this is Hannah from Handmade by Design, and today we're going to be making things with flowers and lemons in the colors yellow and blue. DIY number 1 is a wreath that we're going to be making. The whole inspiration for all of this came from a piece of fabric that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. So we're going to need blue paint from the Dollar Tree, a pair of wire nippers, a 14-inch grapevine wreath, and the florals that I used were greenery from Michael's, greenery from the Dollar Tree, that came in a bush and I snipped them off, lemon picks from Temu, roses from the Dollar Tree, blue tulips from Temu, and yellow tulips from Michael's. And then I had a few assorted lemons in my stash. I also bought a birdhouse last year at Dollar General, and it was half off, so I paid $1.75 for the birdhouse. The first thing I did was I snipped off the jute top from the top of the house, and it left a little hole in the house, but I was pretty sure that I could cover it on the wreath. Using the blue paint, I painted the base of the house, I painted all of the trim work, and I painted both sides of the birdhouse. I had a miniature nest with eggs in it and a miniature bird that I purchased at Temu, and I glued these onto the front of the birdhouse. I'm putting together this wreath in real time because I want you to see exactly how long it takes and how truly easy it is to make a gorgeous wreath, especially if you have pre-cut all of the picks and the flowers. I glued the birdhouse onto the wreath, and I just glued it on by adding hot glue. And I glued it on at about between 3:30 and 4 o'clock. And then I began to add greenery. I used a Lazy Susan and I put a tray on top of it so that it would be easier for me to work on my wreath. I could twist it around and turn it around as I went to work. I began with the greenery from Michael's, and I put that greenery directly into the grapevine wreath where I didn't have to use any hot glue. And the reason I did this is because it stayed very well, and secondly, because if there comes a time when I want to undo this wreath and repurpose it for something else, it will be easy to take the greenery out. Using the greenery from Michael's, I placed it on the top of the wreath, more towards the outside of the wreath, and I spaced them all equidistant from one another. So this greenery covered the top of the wreath and part of the outside of the wreath. Next, I cut the branches off of the greenery bush from the Dollar Tree, and I went in between each piece of greenery from Michael's, and on the outside of the wreath, I placed a piece of the greenery from the Dollar Tree. And if they weren't lying flush against the wreath, I was not worried about it because this is going to be a very full wreath. So having that greenery stick out a bit worked out just great. So I go around and add these in between every piece of the greenery from Michael's. When adding the greenery and the florals to the wreath, I make sure that they are all facing in the same direction. Next, I added one of the lemon picks in between all of the greenery around the top of the wreath. Next, I added a blue rose in front of every lemon pick all around the entire wreath. In trimming the tulips off of the bush, they came off in sets of 3. So I adhered 3 of the yellow tulips under each blue rose all around the outside of the wreath. Next, I took a solitary blue tulip and I had to use hot glue because the stems did not have the integrity to adhere to the grapevine leaf. So I used as little hot glue as possible, and I glued a blue tulip underneath each of the bunches of 3 tulips. Next, I added picks from the Dollar Tree on the inside of the wreath, and as you can see, I added them equidistant from one another. It was great having the Lazy Susan because even though it wasn't set up ideally, I could turn it around and see where there were holes in the wreath. My daughter is here with my 5-month-old grandson, so if you hear baby noises in the back, it's Sebastian giving us his opinion on how the wreath is coming along. Next, I filled the entire inside of the wreath with the yellow tulips, and I was very generous adding the yellow tulips. I filled the inside of that wreath in until it was just laden with those yellow tulips. And the wreath is beginning to look absolutely beautiful. I use the lemons from my stash and I place them along the top of the wreath where I feel like they'll look best. I just space them all around the top of the wreath and add them, and it looks so great with the additional lemons. Next, I fill in any of the holes along the bottom of the wreath with the yellow tulips. And just like on the inside of the wreath, I add a lot of yellow tulips so that the bottom of the wreath is completely full of yellow tulips all the way around the wreath. I finish adding the yellow tulips and I check the wreath thoroughly and make a few final adjustments, making sure that there's no holes in the wreath and that everything is completely full and lush and looks uniform. It was so fun making this wreath. I really love the color combination. I fluff up all of the lemon picks. And this wreath is complete. I love the birdhouse with the nest and the bird on the wreath, and I think that the yellow and blue complement each other so well, and I just love the fullness of this wreath. I'm so happy with the outcome of the wreath. I hope that you like it as much as I do. I think that it is so pretty. Here are a few close-ups of the wreath so that you can see the detail on the bird's nest and the bird on the house and the complete wreath. Our next project, we're going to be making something that matches this wreath beautifully. For DIY number 2, I used the inspiration fabric. I purchased a frame with a saying on it from the Dollar Tree, and I didn't want to use the saying, but I did want to use the cardboard that it was on to place the inspiration fabric around the cardboard. I wrapped the fabric around the cardboard and I really liked the way that it looked. I thought this would make a great picture and will complement the wreath beautifully. I used the X-Acto knife to trim around the saying that was inside of the frame, and once I scored it, I cut the poster board out with a pair of scissors. And I chose yellow poster board because I'm going to be making a custom mat to go inside the frame with the yellow poster board. I thought the color was just perfect. I lined up a straight edge and I went from point to point, the 1-inch points on my mat with a craft knife, and I just kept scoring it until I had a clean cut. And I did this on all 4 sides of the poster board. I lifted the centerpiece out from around the poster board, and with my craft knife I just shaved off any little imperfections, and now I have a custom made mat for my artwork, and it fits perfectly. The fabric that I'm using is just a little bit wrinkled, and I want it to look crisp and clean and unwrinkled inside of the artwork. So I iron the fabric until there are no wrinkles left. Once it's ironed, I cut the fabric off directly around the piece that it's going to fit on inside of the picture frame. I use hot glue all along the edges to place and stretch out the fabric so that it has a nice straight and stretched look along the cardboard insert. I laid the mat inside of the frame, and I cut off any extra fabric, and I laid down the fabric directly over the mat. I folded all the metal tabs in on the artwork to hold it all together. I'm so happy with the way that this artwork came out. Now I'm going to paint the frame. I use the blue paint from the Dollar Tree, and I paint the top of the frame and the side of the frame. I don't paint the inside of the frame. I leave it black, and I think it looks just fine that way. And this is how it turns out. It looks like a painting with a custom frame, and I'm really thrilled with the outcome, and it goes so beautifully with the wreath. DIY number 3 is a candle and a candle holder. I have some napkins with lemons on them, and I took off the 2 layers of the white napkins, leaving me with just the 1 layer, and I decoupaged the entire napkin over a Dollar Tree battery candle with Mod Podge. I just rolled the candle all around over the napkin until it was completely covered. Next, I added more Mod Podge to the top of the candle just to make sure that everything was adhering properly, and the napkin just fell off by itself. So I pulled the napkin off of the top of the candle while it was still wet. I added a coat of Mod Podge to the outside of the napkin. I just used my fingers and pushed back or pushed in or pushed out any little stray pieces of Mod Podge from the top of the candle. While the Mod Podge is drying, I use chalk paint and white chalk paint and paint a candlestick. Once the decoupage is dry, I add a stamp with some script on it, and I just go around the candle and add the stamp where I think it will look nice. There were pink flowers on the napkin, so I took the blue paint from the Dollar Tree, and wherever there was a pink flower, I painted it over with the blue paint. I then took yellow paint and dabbed the centers of each of the flowers, and I painted the lemons on the napkin yellow so that they would be a brighter yellow and a better match for the rest of the project. And this candle is done. I so enjoyed making these projects for you, and I hope that it inspires you to make something beautiful. If you enjoy what you saw, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button so that you'll be notified the next time that I post a video. And until then, thank you so much, and I will see you next time.